Justice is in no thing excess or privation. Justice is in all things truth, victorious over all error. Thus there may be 50 errors about a matter, but only one truth. And justice is to discover that truth. Man, surrounded by many factors in living, must seek always the balance, must seek always the truth that underlies all these different contending, dissenting parts. He can never know them all. He can never understand them all. He can never recognize them all. Therefore, he remains true only to the balance, keeping the equilibrium, and in all matters clinging to the law. For the law is his hope and his salvation. So by library he is taught that in all matters he must, first of all, be true to principle. And if he is true to principle, all other things will balance out. And he passes from there to the ancient sign of the scorpion, sometimes represented as a serpent and again as an eagle, the only sign which has 3 distinct glyphs of its own. Now they said in ancient times that the scorpion was the symbol of death. But in the old mysteries, the sign of the scorpion and the sign of Scorpio, the ninth house of Mars, the nocturnal entrance to the underworld, was always guarded by the god Hippocrates. Not Hippocrates, Hippocrates, the god of silence. And he was always represented standing or seated at the front of the temple in this position, with one finger on his lips. He was the god of silence. So the sign of Scorpio in the old mystery rituals taught us the secret of silence, the most valuable noise that there is. Silence is a strange, deep darkness. But silence, while it may seem to be the mother of mysteries, is exactly and actually the firstborn of truth. For in silence and silence alone, all mysteries are solved. All soundings end in silence, and from silence came all sound. And man, in his search for reality, must not only have courage, have skill, and have understanding, but he must also have the power to be silent. For if to speak is silver, as the German proverb used to say, to be silent is golden. And this golden silence is not merely not speaking. It is a silence of quietude within consciousness. It is this actual problem of being still that we may know the mystery of the divine presence. So the sign of Scorpio has always been peculiarly associated with the mystery rituals. All rituals had to do with death. All symbolical transformations were represented by the mortuary ritual. The initiate passing into the underworld in the ritual went through the mystery of death, presumably, symbolically. For he descended, as the rite says, into the great silence. He descended into the aloneness, into the abyss of darkness. And here he must not be afraid. So silence is the gateway to internal life. And for every person who can speak wisely, there is a greater wisdom for those who can simply listen. Strangely, the power to listen is greater than the power to speak. And who listens learns. Who speaks knows only about himself. Thus, in the ancient rites, the search for silence was the ability of the person to remain eternally receptive and observant, always able to accept, and never interrupting God with his own voice. For in the mysteries, To speak is to interrupt God, but God is the infinite truth abiding in the silence. And when our speaking gets too loud, we cannot hear the voice of the infinite. So to be quiet, to be receptive, to conquer sound in our own souls, to seek silence, this is to pass this mystery of the scorpion, who becomes transformed into the serpent of wisdom and into the eagle phoenix of inspiration. Now the ancient sign of Sagittarius was the old sign of aspiration, for it represented the old centaur who was the teacher of Achilles. It was therefore the representative of nature. It was representative of the universe. The centaur is the universe as man's instructor. Therefore, out of the many levels and powers of the natural process come the instructions which are to serve man, and the great instructions are religion, philosophy, and science. And the centaur represents these, because he is born out of the threefold mystery of the universe, part human, part animal, and aiming his shaft at the stars. So in this particular mystery, in the search of the soul for reality, the centaur represents instruction. Now, instruction is a strange word. What shall a man learn? How shall he learn? How shall he know when he has learned? The ability to receive instruction, said Socrates, is first of all the ability to accept reproof. The individual is hypersensitive to any criticism of his own thinking, who is unable to change his own attitudes, who considers it more important to remain the same than to accept guidance, has not learned the mystery of instruction. For instruction, as Emerson points out, is the inevitable consequence of the enlightened human being's contact with nature, whether it be human nature or universal nature. From every other human being we can learn something, for this human being may be only of our own kind, the animal body of the centaur. But yet there is not a person who lives that does not know something that we ought to know. In the same way, we can learn from every branch of knowledge, not only its immediate instruction, but its great message, the message about universals. And we can see that all knowledge flows from the great fountains of universal consciousness, and that sky and earth and air are forever teaching, that the sunrise and the sunset are our instructors, and that everything that happens has a message. Adversity, sorrow, problem, responsibility. These are the teachings of the centaur. For the centaur is life and nature, teaching us to become heroes. And some will reject the teacher because the body is that of a horse. Others will say that the teacher itself is only an imperfect creature rising out of its own darkness. But nature is that. Nature is a god with the body of a horse. And nature is the teacher. And it is teaching us both human ways and divine ways. It is teaching us both the mysteries of our animal existence and of our universal state. To be receptive and to recognize instruction, and to see the universal teacher in the simplest of our friends, or perhaps in our own children, is to be able to know instruction. And beyond the sign of instruction lies the ancient symbol of Capricornus, the sea-goat, dedicated to the two cities of Babylon and Nineveh, one upon the top of a mountain and the other by the shores of the sea, part fish, part goat, and the infinite symbol of man's eternal prudence. For in all things, man must be prudent. He must be forever mindful of the dangers of excess. And he must realize that even a virtue overworked becomes a vice. He must search for temperance, which makes prudence natural and reasonable. The prudent individual is the one who neither overestimates nor underestimates, thinking that neither that he is stronger than nor weaker than himself. So prudence has about it self-analysis. And the sea-goat tells us the story of man's prudence, guarding the higher and lower parts of himself, derived partly from the sign of the mountain and partly from the sign of the valley. The sea-goat becomes the symbol of extremes, which must be bound by prudence. Man must not ascend too high, nor must he fall too low. For when someone asked Aesop what was the work of the gods, he said, the labor of the gods is that they are forever raising up the humble and are forever casting down the great. And this is the problem of prudence. Man must never rise too high. Man must never fall too low. And whatever direction he seems to extend, he must forever search again to control the consequences of excess, coming back to prudence. Prudence which causes him to grow no more rapidly than he can. One of the commonest problems of imprudence in growth is the person who, overestimating his own attainments, rushes forward and takes upon himself responsibilities and duties too much for his knowledge, and then finds reverse or tragedy. Never overestimate yourself. Never underestimate your adversary. Never overestimate what you know or underestimate what you do not know. But remaining fair and honorable and prudent in all things, use what you know and improve yourself in what you do not know. And you will find a great security, a great integrity, which will enable you to live with yourself without doubt. For if you are reasonable and prudent, you have faith in the judgment of yourself. You know that you are careful, that you are thoughtful, that you are rational in your procedures. Now the 11th sign is a water bearer, carrying upon his shoulders the canoptic jar from which pours a strange stream of electrical energy. And the symbol that this carries to the truth seeker in his effort to grow is the eternal recognition that it is the desire of the truth seeker to build better worlds and better ways for others. Therefore, this sign is curiously connected with aspiration. An aspiration is a strange quicksand. Again, man must fight the houres of illusion, for wherever there is a virtue, there is an illusion twisted around it. And as Eliphas Levi, the great French transcendentalist, said, in the beautiful pastures of the astral light, every blossom has a poisoned serpent twisted around the stem. And when you pick the flower, you are bitten by the serpent. Now, aspiration is like that. We all desire to build a better world. We desire to create this golden age we look for. We seek utopias, but we know why they have failed. We seek to bestow upon others vision which they cannot receive. We demand from others understanding which they cannot give. We find a world unsatisfactory, so we declare war against it and do nothing. We reject society because we do not endorse it. And if it fails to live up to our standard of what it should be, we curse it in our hearts. Forever, behind the thin veneer of altruism, we fall into criticism, condemnation, and strangely subtle destructiveness. And nearly all of our so-called aspiring souls have been antisocial, because they have never really understood the world they were trying to help. They have never recognized that we are all working with children. We are working with good children and not bad adults. We are working with those who cannot know more than they do. And we must build our dreams of a better world upon realities, upon things as they are, recognizing that progress is a series of slow and gentle steps, and that if we take one step wisely, we lift the world further than when we race ahead and then beckon it to follow. It cannot follow. So aspiration must be geared to abilities, our own and the abilities of others. If we aspire too greatly, we cannot live up to it ourselves, and our conscience hurts us. When we claim virtues that we cannot apply, we injure ourselves. So our claims should be more modest, and we should always aspire to the next thing, moving one step, and realizing that the great journey of life is a trip which is made up entirely of single steps. When we so understand, we are then able to bear all things with that virtue which comes under the mystery of the fishes. For in ancient times, the fish was sometimes called the symbol of the poet. And the poet, of course, is always the one who buries an empire. He is the one who writes the funeral odes to the glories of all other things. But the poet also becomes the symbol, in this case, of patience, a virtue man has much trouble with, and also of humility, which is easy if we are patient. But patience, humility, and the poesy of high verse belong to this side, for its purpose, its real reason for existence, is that it teaches man the mystery of enduring. For in the sign of the fishes comes the deluge that wipes away all things, but beyond the deluge there comes a new heaven and a new earth. So the sign of the fishes is always waiting for the resurrection. It is that which, having planted the seed of the earth, must wait patiently for God who doeth the works. So in this sign man learns that there are things which he can do and there are things which he cannot do, and that it is right and proper for man to labor, but the works must be crowned with the life of the universe. Man without the universe can do nothing. Man cannot hasten the gods, nor can he retard them. He can prepare their ways, but he must await their works. So patience means that man can no longer be disillusioned, no longer defeated. No longer can he die of a broken heart because things are not imminently successful. Patience gives perspective. It gives great time. It is the hope of the long-visioned. It is the only answer to the great things that must be done. For these things must be fulfilled in the fullness of their own time, and not according to the hopes and ambitions of mortals. So patience and humility complete the signs where the road began with courage, and all courage ends in patience, and all strength must end in humility. And then the great cycle begins again, for humility reveals the courage and gives birth again to the beginning of things. For from patience comes a strange kind of courage that is not of this world. So the ancients said man walking the golden road had to learn these mysteries, and we have to learn them today just the same. And out of learning them, we keep the great pattern of the road that leads upward around the stars and into space. And this road is going to continue to lead. And men may conquer space. They may go out and travel to other planets and other stars. But they can never get beyond the mysterious, invisible road for which the stars stand, where all conquest must fail, all discovery must come to naught, unless conquest is the conquest of self, and discovery is the discovery of that which is locked within the innermost and the furthermost of existence. Thus the astronomy and the philosophy and the religion of these peoples formed one pattern. And I think there is sufficient utility in that pattern to make it worth our remembering. And also there is something quaintly delightful in these mythological burdens and the intricate chess games of emotions and attitudes to which they bear witness. Our ancient friends were very astute in their understanding of human psychology. We can profit by the fable if we can apply it to ourselves. And by so doing, we will understand man's journey around the great mystery of the golden road that leads back home. And I think that that more or less summarizes the concept of the ancient astrotheological philosophy. And we thank you very much.